Welcome to School of Social Justice. Today, class, I cut my toenails too short. I would like for my foot to be cut off. It hurts so bad. Oh my god, you guys be careful. Don't cut your toenails too short. That's what I get for having double lunch. Oh my god. Tammy, thank you for the heart me. Lulu, you are so fucking funny. The universe is punishing you for double lunch. Oh my god. Okay. Today in class, I put these handouts in the Discord. They're in the Discord. Tammy, thank you for the heart me. They're in the Discord, okay? Discord, if you want to look at them. Today we are going to be unpacking the invisible knapsack of white privilege, all right? Privilege, an invisible package of unearned assets that I can count on cashing in each day, but about which I was meant to remain oblivious. That was said by somebody named Peggy McIntosh. I don't know who that is. Just saying. Okay. This is out of... What book is this out of? I don't know. Anyways, I'm just going to read through this. And we're going to learn about white privilege. Now, nobody get their britches in a bundle, okay? It is not a bad thing to be privileged. And many people look at it as an insult. But we all have a privilege in some way. I skipped ahead. I've experienced internalized oppression quite a bit. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. They didn't cite her work blasphemy. I know. I know. This comes from the Tri-County Domestic and Sexual Violence Intervention Network Anti-Oppression Training for Trainers, created by Carol Cheney, Jenny LaFranche, and Terry Quinteros, 2006. You can find more information at actforaction.org. Okay? Okay? Hello on YouTube. Thanks for joining. Okay, so I'm just going to read through this. If you have any questions, stop me. Questions, comments, concerns. We're going to learn together. Okay? Now, keep in mind this came from my women's studies class. So anyways, yeah. Through work to bring materials from women's studies into the rest of the curriculum, I have noticed men's unwillingness to grant that they are overprivileged, even though they may grant the women that women are disadvantaged. They may say they will work to improve women's status in the society, the university, or the curriculum, but they can't or won't support the idea of lessening men's. Denials that amount to taboos surround the subject of advantages that men gain from women's disadvantages. These denials protect male privilege from being fully acknowledged, lessened, or ended. Thinking through acknowledged male privilege as a phenomenon, I realized that since hierarchies in our society are interlocking, there was most likely a phenomenon of white privilege that was similarly denied and protected. As a white person, I realized I had been taught about racism as something that puts others at a disadvantage, but had been taught not to see one of its corollary aspects, white privilege, which puts me at an advantage. Oh snaps, I should leave. I know where this is going. Mace, get out of here. I mean, don't get out of here. You stay here. This is more about, this is more about white privilege, but it has to do with men's privilege too. Listen, who's the biggest oppressors around? White men, right? So, okay. I'm just saying, I think you should stick around. I think whites are carefully taught not to recognize white privilege, as males are taught not to recognize male privilege. Amen for have a lot of privilege. I cannot deny this. Yes. Sometimes it's good to be uncomfortable. Exactly. Okay. I think whites are carefully taught not to recognize white privilege, as males are taught not to recognize male privilege. So I began in an untutored way to ask what it is like to have white privilege. I have come to see white privilege as an invisible package of unearned assets that I can count on cashing in each day, but about which I was meant to remain oblivious. White privilege is like an invisible weightless knapsack of special provisions, maps, passports, code books, visas, closed tools, and blank checks. Describing white privilege makes one newly accountable. As we in women's studies work to reveal male privilege and ask men to give up some of their power, no one who writes about having white privilege must ask, having described it, what will I do to lessen or end it? After I realized the extent to which men work from a base of unacknowledged privilege, I understood that much of their oppressiveness was unconscious. Then I remembered the frequent charges from women of color that white women whom they encounter are oppressive. I began to understand why we are justly seen as oppressive, even when we don't see ourselves that way. I began to count the ways in which I enjoy unearned skin privilege and have been conditioned into oblivion about its existence. See, this is the thing. Like, white women are fucking horrible as well, right? Like, men, especially white men, carry their privilege, but women can be just as horrible. When it comes to feminism, when it comes to women's rights, historically, white women have oppressed women of color, trans women, non-binary people. Like, they're not very inclusive either. So we all have our fucking, like, guilt in this. You know what I mean? My schooling gave me no training in seeing myself as an oppressor, as an unfairly advantaged person, or as a participant in a damaged culture. I was taught to see myself as an individual whose moral state depended on her individual moral will. My schooling followed the pattern my colleague Elizabeth Minich has pointed out. Whites are taught to think of their lives as morally neutral, normative, and average, and also ideal, so that when we work to benefit others, this is seen as work that will allow them to be more like us. Hector, hello. Daily effects of white privilege. If most all women stood up for each other, we wouldn't have these problems. Yeah. I decided to try work on myself, at least by identifying some of the daily effects of white privilege in my life. I have chosen those conditions that I think, in my case, attach somewhat more to skin color privilege than class, religion, ethnic status, or geographic location. Though, of course, all these other factors are intricately intertwined. As far as I can tell, my African American coworkers, friends, and acquaintances with whom I come into daily or frequent contact in this particular time, place, and line of work cannot count on most of these conditions. Okay, 1. I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. 2. If I should need to move, I can be pretty sure of renting or purchasing housing in an area that I can afford and in which I would want to live. 3. I can be pretty sure that my neighbors in such location will be neutral or pleasant to me. 4, I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured that I will not be followed or harassed. 5, I can turn on the television or open to the front page of the paper and see people of my race widely represented. 6, when I am told about our national heritage or about civilization, I am shown that people of my color made it what it is, which is fucking horribly wrong. We did not build this country. Us white people did not build this country. 7, I can be sure that my children will be given curricular materials that testify to the existence of their race. If I want to, I can be pretty sure of finding a publisher for this piece on white privilege. 9, I can go into a music shop and count on finding the music of my race represented into a supermarket and find the staple foods that fit with my cultural traditions, into a hairdresser shop and find someone who can deal with my hair. Also, I just want to make sure that we have the full understanding also, because it's using the word race a lot, is that race is a made-up term. It's a social construct. White people made up race so that they could be oppressors. 10, whether I use checks, credit cards, or cash, I can count on my skin color not to work against the appearance of financial reliability. 11, I can arrange to protect my children most of the time from people who might not like them. 12, I can swear or dress in secondhand clothes or not answer letters without having people attribute those choices to the bad morals, the poverty, or the illiteracy of my race. 13, I can speak in public to a powerful male group without putting my race on trial. 14, I can do well in challenging situation without being called a credit to my race. 15, I am never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. 16, I can remain oblivious of the language and customs of persons of color who constitute the world's majority without feeling in my culture any penalty for such oblivion. It is involved. 17, I can criticize our government and talk about how much I fear its policies and behavior without being seen as a cultural outsider. Okay, that one doesn't really anymore. Remember, this was written in 2006, so some things might be outdated. Okay. 18, I can be pretty sure that if I ask to talk to the person in charge, I will be facing a person of my race. If a traffic cop pulls me over or if the IRS audits my tax return, I can be sure I haven't been singled out because of my race. I think 18 is kind of outdated too, but just for the concept of like the point of the paper, yeah. 20, I can easily buy posters, postcards, picture books, greeting cards, dolls, toys, and children's magazines featuring people of my race. 21, I can go home from most meetings of organizations I belong to feeling somewhat tied in rather than isolated, out of place, outnumbered, unheard, held at a distance, or feared. 22, I can take a job with an affirmative action employer without having coworkers on the job suspect that I got it because of my race. Well, they just fucking destroyed affirmative action, so cross that one fucking out. I can choose public accommodation without fearing that people of my race cannot get in or will be mistreated in the places I've chosen. 24, I can be sure that if I need legal or medical help, my race will not work against me. 25, if my day, week, or year is going badly, I need not ask of each negative episode or situation whether it has racial overtones. 26, I can choose blemish cover or bandages in flesh color that more or less match my skin. Speaking of that, if you go, I don't know if they do it anymore, but like Target was really guilty of this. Hey Jessica, so Target used to, like, in their makeup aisle, the darker the tone of the what's it called, foundation, the darker the tone of the foundation were the ones that had security tags on them, and the lighter toned foundations did not. Full on just blatant racism in the Target. I mean, well, obviously now we know Target is what it is, but I was in a car accident and was treated like a king. They found brain bleeds and everything. Really? That's your man privilege. That's your man privilege. I'm just saying. Blows my mind what happened to special education that affects all ethnicities. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that it's not about, this is what people don't get. Like, they're like, oh, you know, all of this is just affecting immigrants or trans people. Like, they're coming for everybody, you guys. They're not like, and they don't want, like, to be blatantly honest, they don't want kids with special needs succeeding. They want, listen, I'm gonna bring it back to this every fucking time. They want only 100 million people in the United States. That's what they're trying to narrow us down to. You're probably right about that one. I was shocked at the level of care. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It sucks, you know? Everybody should just not have to worry that they're gonna not get good treatment because of being, you know, a certain gender or non-gender or color or whatever. 200 million removed. Aren't we at 350 million? Yeah, I think we're at like 344 million is about where we're at in the United States, and they want to take it down to 100 million. And this is like, you can Google it, like it's been said. Okay. And these are the things, like, everybody has a privilege over somebody else in one way or another. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? But it's what you do with that privilege. Are you using it for good? Or are you using it to harm people? Are you, like, just complacent? That's the question. And people get so, hello from Ohio. People get so in such a fluff about being told they have a privilege or that they're privileged, and it's like, it's not an insult as long as you're not using it to hurt people. My friend Dinah, rest in peace, when her and her husband bought their house, she was like, I have so much guilt about being in a position where I can buy a house. And I'm like, dude, don't feel guilty. You've done nothing wrong. You were able to buy a house. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being able to buy a house. You're not harming somebody because you bought a house. You know what I mean? Now, if you bought a house and in your neighborhood you did everything you could to keep people of color out, now that would be something to feel guilty about. But being able to buy a house, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, we're only at 20 minutes, so I'm going to keep reading. I was going to try to split this up into 2 parts, but we might be able to get through it. Okay. Elusive and fugitive. They could be reeling us up to the just shoot us down soon. Yeah. I repeatedly forgot each of the realizations on this list until I wrote it down. For me, white privilege has turned out to be an elusive and fugitive subject. The pressure to avoid it is great. For in facing it, I must give up the myth of meritocracy. If these things are true, this is not such a free country. One's life is not what one makes it. Many doors open for certain people through no virtues of their own. Ryling, sorry, it keeps autocorrecting. It's okay. In unpacking this invisible knapsack of white privilege, I have listed conditions of daily experience that I once took for granted. Nor did I think of any of these prerequisites as bad for the holder. I now think that we need a more finely differentiated taxonomy of privilege, for some of these varieties are only what one would want for everyone in a just society, and others give license to be ignorant, oblivious, arrogant, and destructive. I see a pattern running through the matrix of white privilege, a pattern of assumptions that were passed on to me as a white person. There was one main piece of cultural turf. It was my own turf, and I was among those who could control the turf. My skin color was an asset for any move I was educated to want to make. I could think of myself as belonging in major ways and of making social systems work for me. I could freely disparage, fear, neglect, or be oblivious to anything outside of the dominant cultural forms. Being of the main culture, I could also criticize it fairly and freely. Okay. In proportion of my racial group was being made confident, comfortable, and oblivious, other groups were likely being made unconfident, uncomfortable, and alienated. Whiteness protected me from many kinds of hostility, distress, and violence, which I was being subtly trained to visit in turn upon people of color. For this reason, the word privilege now seems to me misleading. We usually think of privilege as being a favored state, whether earned or conferred by birth or luck. Yet some of the conditions I have described here work systematically to over-empower certain groups. Such privilege simply confers dominance because of one's race or sex. Earned strength and unearned power. I want then to distinguish between earned strength and unearned power confirmed systematically. Power from unearned privilege can look like strength when it is in fact permission to escape or to dominate. But not all of the privilege on my list are inevitably damaging. Some, like the expectation that neighbors will be decent to you or that your race will not count against you in court, should be the norm in a just society. Others, like the privilege to ignore less powerful people, distort the humanity of the holders as well as the ignored groups. We might at least start by distinguishing between positive advantages which we can work to spread and negative types of advantage which, unless rejected, will always reinforce our present hierarchies. For example, the feeling that one belongs within the human circle, as Native Americans say, should not be seen as a privilege for a few. Ideally, it is an unearned entitlement. At present, since only a few have it, it is an unearned advantage for them. This paper results from a process of coming to see that some of the power that I originally saw as attendant on being a human being in the U.S. consistent in unearned advantage and conferred dominance. I have met very few men who are truly distressed about systemic unearned male advantage and conferred dominance. And no one questioned, and so no, my God, I can't talk. And so one question for me and others like me is whether we will be like them or whether we will get truly distressed, even outraged about unearned race advantage and conferred dominance, and if so, what we will do to lessen them. In any case, we need to do more work in identifying how they actually affect our daily lives. Many, perhaps most, of our white students in the US think that racism doesn't affect them because they are not people of color. They do not see whiteness as a racial identity. In addition, since race and sex are not the only advantaging systems at work, we need similarly to examine the daily experience of having age advantage or ethnic advantage or physical ability or advantage related to nationality, religion, or sexual orientation. Difficulties. It was a typo, didn't mean to send you anything, sorry. Difficulties and dangers surrounding the task of finding parallels are many. Since racism, sexism, and heterosexism are not the same, the advantaging associated with them should not be seen as the same. In addition, it is hard to disentangle aspects of unearned advantage, which rest more in social class, economic class, race, religion, and sex and ethnic identity than on other factors. Still, all of the oppressions are interlocking, as the Combahee River Collective Statement in 1977 continues to remind us eloquently, which we'll read that someday. I've had that assigned to me so many fucking times in my classes. One factor seems clear about all of the interlocking oppressions. They take both active forms, which we can see, and embedded forms, which is, as a member of the dominant group, one is taught not to see. In my class and place, I did not see myself as a racist because I was taught to recognize racism only in individual acts of meanness by members of my group, never in invisible systems conferring unsought racial dominance on my group from birth. Disapproving of the systems won't be enough to change them. I was taught to think that racism could end if white individuals changed their attitudes, but a white skin in the United States opens many doors for whites, whether or not we approve of the way dominance has been conferred on us. Individual acts can palliate, but cannot end these problems. To redesign social systems, we need first to acknowledge their colossal unseen dimensions. The silences and denials surrounding privilege are the key political tool here. They keep the thinking about equality or equity incomplete, protecting unearned advantage, and conferred dominance by making these taboo subjects. Most talk by whites about equal opportunity seems to be about equal opportunity to try to get into a position of dominance while denying that systems of dominance exist. It seems to me that obliviousness about white advantage, like obliviousness about male advantage, is kept strongly enculturated in the United States so as to maintain the myth of meritocracy, the myth that democratic choice is equally available to all, keeping most people unaware that freedom of confident action is there for just a small number of people props up those in power, and serves to keep power in the hands of the same groups that have most of it already. Though systematic change takes many decades, and now we've been fucking pushed back like a century, it feels like, there are pressing questions for me, and I imagine for some others like me, if we raise our daily consciousness on the prerequisites, that's a weird word, of being light-skinned. I think they meant prerequisites and just spelled it wrong. What will we do with such knowledge? As we know from watching men, it is an open question whether we will choose to use unearned advantage to weaken hidden systems of advantage, and whether we will use any of our arbitrarily awarded power to try to reconstruct power systems on a broader base. Copyright Peggy McIntosh. There, she was cited. And that's it. Kim, thank you for the heart me and the go popular. Questions, comments, and or concerns? Interesting. Anyone, anything? YouTube, you got anything to say? Okay, I'm going to turn off the YouTube. Thanks for joining. Go give me a subscribe if you haven't yet. Thanks for hanging out.